He still remembers the smell of the fog that night. Not the clean, wet smell of rain, but something else. A metallic cold, like the air had been breathed in and out by something that had no lungs. It's a smell that even now, 40 years later, clings to the edges of his memory, a phantom stain he can never scrub clean. His name is Leo, and he was the one they left behind. It was November 5th, 1983, in the quiet, tree-lined streets of Oakhaven. A suburb so ordinary it was practically invisible, the kind of place where fathers mowed their lawns on Saturdays, and the biggest scandal was a misplaced garden gnome. The children of Mrs. Higgins's third-grade class at Oakhaven Elementary had been rehearsing for the annual Harvest Festival pageant. Leo remembered the chaos of cardboard turkeys and paper pilgrim hats, the scent of dried Elmer's glue and construction paper. He remembered his best friend, Sammy, poking him in the ribs, whispering about the new G.I. Joe toy he'd gotten for his birthday. Normal, simple things. The last normal things he would ever know. The trouble started with a dare. It was Sammy's idea, of course. The old schoolyard legend of the midnight bell. The story went that if you stood in the exact center of the fog-shrouded playground at the stroke of midnight, the old brass bell in the school's clock tower would toll a 13th time, and you would be granted a single wish. A child's fantasy. A harmless piece of playground lore passed down from older siblings. A story told to send shivers down spines before a fit of giggles. But that night, with the fog already beginning to creep in, thick and unnaturally silent, the legend felt different. It felt possible. Mrs. Higgins, a woman whose kindness was as deep as the lines on her face, had stayed late to finish the pageant props. She'd let the children play outside for a few extra minutes while she tidied up. A decision that would haunt what was left of her life. Leo remembered watching the fog swallow the swings, the monkey bars vanishing into a wall of shifting gray. He'd felt a chill, a primal warning that whispered in the back of his mind to go inside, to find the safety of the fluorescent lights. But the other children, 24 of them, were caught in the thrill of the dare. They were going to do it. They were going to wait for midnight. Leo had hung back, his small hand pressed against the cold glass of the classroom window. He saw them, his classmates, gathering in a loose circle in the center of the field, their small forms becoming silhouettes, then smudges, then mere suggestions in the deepening gloom. The fog wasn't just thick, it seemed to pulse, to drink the light from the security lamp over the school's back door. And then he saw the other shapes. Tall, slender, darker than the fog itself. They moved without walking, gliding between the children. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, his eyes straining against the impossible density of the mist. But then one of the figures stopped, and though it had no face that he could discern, he felt its attention, its gaze, lock onto him through the window. A wave of pure, unadulterated terror, colder than ice, seized his heart. He couldn't move. He couldn't scream.
The clock on the wall, a cheerful plastic cat with a pendulum tail, began to chime. It was midnight. The first tone was normal, a clear, resonant sound. The second, the third. But by the fifth chime, the sound had changed. It became muffled, distorted, as if the bell was being struck underwater. Leo watched, paralyzed, as the fog on the playground seemed to solidify, to become a shroud of solid white. The dark figures closed in around the circle of children. He saw their outlines merge. He heard not a scream, but a collective soft sigh, the sound of release, of surrender. It was the most terrifying sound he would ever hear. On the 12th chime, the world outside the window vanished completely. The fog, the playground, the dark figures, and every single one of his 24 classmates were simply gone. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a physical weight pressing in on the school, suffocating every last echo of life. Leo stood there, a solitary, trembling boy in a suddenly cavernous and empty building, staring out at a blank, white nothingness. He was alone. He doesn't know how long he stood there before the screaming started, not from outside, but from inside the school. It was Mrs. Higgins. She had come looking for her children, her voice bright with concern, calling their names. He heard her footsteps in the hall, the squeak of her sensible shoes on the polished linoleum, then a sharp, sudden silence, and then the scream. A raw, ragged sound of utter disbelief and horror. She had found the empty classroom. She had found him. The aftermath was a chaos that quickly turned to a deep, chilling silence. Police cars, their lights painting the fog in frantic swirls of red and blue, descended upon Oakhaven Elementary. Search parties were formed, comprised of frantic parents and grim-faced officers. They fanned out across the town, through the woods, along the riverbank. They called out the names of the children into the oppressive fog, their voices swallowed by the unnatural quiet. Leo, wrapped in a scratchy police blanket, sat in the principal's office. He was in shock, his small body shivering uncontrollably, when a detective with a kind voice and tired eyes knelt before him and asked what he saw. All Leo could manage was a whisper, so faint it was almost inaudible. The shadow people in the fog, they took them. His words became the cornerstone of the investigation and the seed of 1,000 conspiracy theories. The official report would later call it a mass disappearance of unknown origin. No ransom notes, no signs of a struggle, no evidence of a vehicle. It was as if 24 children and the spectral figures Leo described had been plucked from the fabric of reality itself. The town of Oakhaven was shattered. The playground, once a place of laughter, was cordoned off with yellow police tape that fluttered in the perpetual chilly breeze that seemed to have settled over the area. It became a ghost town in its own right, a memorial to the impossible. Leo's life became a different kind of nightmare. He was the boy who was left behind. He was a living ghost in his own town, a constant, painful reminder of the tragedy. Whispers followed him in the grocery store. Parents would look at him with a mixture of pity and a strange, unspoken accusation. Why him? Why was he spared? He had no answers. The memory of the faceless gaze from the playground was a scar on his soul, a secret horror he carried alone. He grew up quiet, withdrawn, his eyes always holding a distance, as if he were forever looking into that fog. Years turned into decades. Leo moved away, changed his name, tried to build a life far from the suffocating grief of Oakhaven. He became a historian, a man who found solace in the dead and documented past, a world safer than the one he had survived. But the past has a way of refusing to stay buried. It was while he was researching local land grants for a book, poring over brittle yellow parchments in a state archives building, that he found it. A record from 1822, a land deed for the plot that would one day become Oakhaven. The seller was a reclusive man named Alistair Finch. The buyer was the Oakhaven Township Council, but it was the description of the land that made the blood drain from Leo's face, made the old, metallic smell of fog seem to fill the sterile archive room. The land was referred to by an old, colloquial name, a name that sent a jolt of primal recognition through him. They called it the Crying Field. Driven by a dread he could no longer suppress, Leo began to dig deeper. Following the trail of Alistair Finch, he discovered that Finch was not a farmer or a tradesman, but a man rumored to be a practitioner of the old ways, a whisperer, a man who, according to fragmented town logs, had been accused of leading a breakaway sect that believed in entities that existed in the spaces between. They sought to commune with these beings, to borrow their power. Their rituals, the logs vaguely suggested, required offerings, not of blood or sacrifice, but of essence, of pure, untarnished spirit, the kind spirit found only in the innocent, in children.
The final, horrifying piece of the puzzle came from a private journal donated by a descendant who had no knowledge of its grim significance. It was Alistair Finch's personal diary. In a cramped, frantic script, Finch detailed his sect's attempts to open a gateway on the land, a permanent conduit to the world of these silent, shadowy entities. Their final, desperate ritual, performed on a night of thick fog, had failed. The gateway had not opened. Instead, it had been misaligned, becoming an ephemeral tear in reality, a wound that would only open under specific conditions, in a place of concentrated youthful energy, shrouded in fog at the precise moment of the celestial midnight, and it required a toll, a passage of spirits to anchor the connection. The ritual, he wrote with a trembling hand, required 25 souls, but the sect only ever managed to gather 24. The ritual was incomplete. The gateway remained unstable, a dormant scar on the land, waiting for the final key, the one who was left behind. Leo's breath caught in his throat, the archive room spinning around him. He wasn't the sole survivor. He wasn't spared. He was the target. The entire event, the playground legend that Sammy had so cleverly remembered, the fog that rolled in with such unnatural precision. It wasn't a random tragedy. It was a ritual 40 years in the making. A ghost of a spell cast a century and a half before he was even born, finally reaching its culmination. The 24 children weren't taken by monsters. They were offered a payment to entities from the void, and he was the final component. The one who witnessed it, the one who carried the memory of their gaze, was the anchor that held the door ajar. He wasn't a survivor of the ritual. He was a part of it. He now understands the truth of that metallic smell in the fog. It is the scent of a world that is not our own, bleeding through the tear that his existence helps to maintain. He knows with a certainty that chills him to his marrow that the shadow figures are not gone. They are patient. They are waiting for him. The ritual is not over. It will only be complete when he, the one they left behind, finally returns to the place where it all began. He is the lock, and he is the key. And on certain nights, when the fog is just right and the moon is hidden, he can hear it, a faint, collective sigh on the wind, calling him home to the empty playground, to finally close the circle or to be consumed by it. This is but one of the true whispered horrors that linger in the quiet corners of our world. If you dare to listen to more, to peer into the abyss of other real-life terrors, then subscribe and join me in the shadows. Share your own stories in the comments below if you possess the courage. For the night is long, and some tales are too terrible to be told only once. Fade into the ebony, or let it consume you.